Here is our Bride of Pinbot, the machine. It's working really well, except for the general illumination. These are the lights that stay on like those spotlights. And you can see under the slingshot, there's no light there. There's no light under that slingshot, so the lower playfield GI is out. There are two strings of general illuminations behind the back glass. That one's fine, that one's not. So when we test, we go into tests, we go into general illumination, and we go through the different strings. So the back glass body, there's a few things I'm noticing. One is they're not dimming. And what I expect them to do as I adjust the brightness is to dim and flicker because they're LEDs, but they're not. Used in helmet, I don't really know what that means, so we're going to ignore that for now, but it might be a clue. The rear playfield is the same way. It works. As I dim it though, it just goes from off to full, and you can see those spotlights I have connected to the upper playfield or the rear playfield. And back glass, no body. Again, it's either all on or just off. Front playfield doesn't turn on at all. And so that's the problem we're going to try to solve today. The most important thing about general illumination in these games of this era, which are called WPC games, is that the connectors involved in general illumination, which are this one and this one, which are tied together. One goes to the back box and one goes to the cabinet. And this one over here, this receives power from the transformer in the cabinet. And so what you got here is like 8 volts alternating current. With neutral are the striped wires and hot would be the solid yellow wires. And so you have these 3 identical AC loops coming in that supply power by way of these triacs and then send current to these loops of general illumination strings, which are coded by color. So you have like green with green white, that'd be a string. Purple or violet with violet white, that'd be another string, and so on. And these connectors, they get burned up and they stop working. And these connectors, you can see, are different from the rest of the connectors, which shows me that the last person to work on this game replaced these connectors, which is very typical because they burn up. And the 2 things you do to save these games are, first, you put LEDs in, that's been done. And second, if you have to rebuild these plugs. More on that in a moment. Sometimes it helps to find the schematic, which you can find on ipdb.org, and print out the relevant portion. And what we have here is 115, J115, which is the incoming AC loops. That would be that one there. And then you have out to the strings themselves. And you have to kind of study this and try to figure it out. And you can figure it out in a variety of ways. Maybe if you need help with this, post a comment and I'll try to help you out with it. But figure out which of these triacs is which and try to make sense of it. Because when you do that, you end up with a map of which pin on the connector that supplies AC coming in, again, that would be this one. Is that wired correctly? And are these wired correctly? Because those are the 3 plugs that were rewired. And here's the deal. This green-white wire was in the wrong pin on that plug. And so I moved that, and that helped. And I'm going to cut to the chase here. There was a blown fuse, and the fuse was blown because this was on the wrong pin, and so it was placing extra load on the violet circuit because the green string in the back box, you can see some green here,
was drawing from the violet circuit.
So that, in a nutshell, is why the lower playfield's GI blew. And then the next thing I noticed as I was trying to figure this out is that these two strings, what's known as the back glass body and back glass no body, referring to the body section and the non-body section of the back glass, they were lighting together. And I discovered through some testing that the solid green line and the solid brown line, the solid green line and the solid brown line were shorted together. So when that happens, it's helpful to unplug these things to see, like, is that a short that's on the board? Is it a short in the cabinet? Or is it short over here? And it turns out that it was a short over here, because if I put an ohm meter to check continuity between green and brown here, it showed that there was a short. So I'm like, well, that's weird. Let's just take a look and see if we can figure it out. Let's just follow this green line. Following the green line around and around and around, just to see if we can find anything obvious. Around. It seems unlikely that we're going to find this. But then, what? Look at this. So here's what happened. The last person to work on this made a mistake over there in repinning that wrong, had some problems, couldn't get half of this back box to light. So they were just like, well, screw it. I guess I'll just tie them together rather than actually solving the problem. And that's what they did. So we're going to get rid of that. Hey, guess what? We did it. So look at this. We go through this test again. Back glass body, half of it lights up, corresponding to her body. Go through this. I still don't know why it's not dimming, and I'm not certain that it's supposed to. Not going to deal with that in this post. Used in helmet. That is a continuing issue that I'm going to have to deal with. Also in another post. Rear playfield. Looks fabulous. Plus those two spotlights that I wired to the rear because the lower wasn't working. Maybe I'll move those later. Back glass no body. Hey, look, there's back glass no body, separate from body. They're lighting separately, and now they're not going to blow fuses anymore. And the front playfield is also lit. I have other issues to deal with, but that one's done. So we get out my little my green pencil. Helmet chase lights are inoperative. The face motor doesn't reverse. Back glass body and no body both light when either is tested. Solved. No GIs dim. It's either full or nothing. Then maybe that's not going to change, and the face motor will do with that. Okay, bye.